Welcome back, aviation enthusiasts. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here. Today, I'm going to be your flight instructor as we navigate the regulatory airspace of FAA Part 21. Now, our ultimate destination for this explainer is mastering the special flight permit. But to really grasp that, we first need to understand the airspace we're actually flying in. We're going to decode exactly what makes an aircraft legally airworthy, right from your standard factory models to custom experimentals, and finally those really unique situations where a plane needs to fly even when it's technically unairworthy. So let's just dive right into it.
Okay, think of this agenda as our pre-flight checklist. We've got 1. Certificate basics, 2. Standard certificates, 3. Special categories, 4. Experimental aircraft, 5. Special flight permits, and 6. Applying for special permits. We'll start broad with the standard rules, narrow our funnel down through the special and experimental stuff, and then deep dive into those critical safety boundaries of special flight permits.
Section 1. Airworthiness Certificate Basics.
Let's start right at the absolute foundation. What actually are these certificates? Well, according to sections 21171 and 21173, an airworthiness certificate is your ultimate authorization to operate an aircraft. If you're a pilot or an owner, you need to know that any registered owner or their agent of a U.S. registered aircraft can apply for this. You just submit it in a form acceptable to the FAA, and you can honestly take it to any FAA office. Basically, it's the official permission slip that says, yep, this machine is legally allowed to leave the ground. Now, what's really fascinating about these certificates is how they're tied directly to the machine itself, not the person. Under Section 21.179, the certificate transfers seamlessly right along with the aircraft when you sell it. It's literally part of the aircraft's identity. And speaking of identity, under Section 21.182, the aircraft absolutely must be properly identified and marked. We'll get into a few exceptions for special permits a bit later, but generally, it has to be marked. Oh, and if you ever need to amend or modify the certificate, Section 21.177 says you can only do that by applying straight to the FAA.
So how long do these certificates actually last? Section 21.181 lays this out beautifully. A standard certificate is kind of like a driver's license. It lasts as long as you properly maintain the vehicle, according to parts 43 and 91. Light sport certificates, those last as long as the aircraft meets its original configuration and doesn't have any unsafe conditions. But notice the stark contrast with the other categories. Experimental certificates, for things like research or market surveys, often only last for a single year, while amateur-built ones might be unlimited. And our main focus, the special flight permit, that is strictly temporary, valid only for the exact, specific period detailed in the permit itself.
All right, moving on to Section 2, Standard Certificate Requirements.
Moving down our funnel here, let's look at what you might call the factory cars of the sky. These are aircraft holding standard airworthiness certificates under Section 21.183. We're talking normal, utility, acrobatic, commuter, transport categories, and even manned free balloons. This brilliantly illustrates how the FAA ensures safety no matter where the aircraft came from. For a brand new aircraft, the FAA just verifies it conforms to its type or production certificate. Easy enough. But for an imported aircraft, there has to be strict bilateral compliance where the state of manufacturer certifies it, followed up by an FAA inspection. And for used or surplus military aircraft, the FAA demands rigorous proof of compliance with airworthiness directives and a full 100-hour inspection. They have to know it's in a condition for safe operation.
But hey, getting that standard certificate isn't just about the plane being able to fly safely. Your aircraft also has to be a good neighbor. Depending on the class and age, the FAA layers on some serious environmental and safety requirements. Transport category jets and propeller-driven small airplanes have to comply with strict noise requirements under Part 36. If it's a transport airplane manufactured after October 1987, it needs to meet highly specific passenger emergency exit requirements. And regardless of when you apply, there are strict fuel venting and exhaust emission regulations. Safety, quietness, and cleanliness, they are all part of the standard package.
Section 3. Navigating Special Airworthiness Categories. Let's see what happens when an aircraft doesn't quite fit that standard mold. Under Section 2117, the FAA literally splits the aviation world straight down the middle into two classifications, standard and special. We're stepping out of the standard everyday stuff now and heading into the wilder, highly specific, and rigorously regulated world of the special classifications. This covers everything from primary and restricted aircraft to light sport, experimental, and of course, our ultimate goal today, the special flight permit.
This is crucial because it groups a massive amount of regulation from sections 21.184 to 21.190. Let's break it down really quick. Primary category aircraft can only hold one category certificate, though kit built is allowed under supervision. Restricted category aircraft are for very specific, non-passenger uses. Think surplus military or agricultural crop dusting planes. Limited aircraft are previously type certificated military aircraft that have been deemed safe for flight. Light sport relies heavily on a manufacturer's statement of compliance. But I want you to look closely at the multiple category. If you have an aircraft that can mechanically convert from a restricted use, like crop dusting, back to carrying passengers, Section 21.187 requires a fresh FAA inspection every single time you swap it back to passenger mode. Safety is never assumed here, it is verified.
All right, Section 4, Experimental Aircraft Certificates. Let's narrow our focus even further. Welcome to Section 21.191, the absolute realm of custom hot rods and test beds of the sky. Now, you can't just call a plane experimental because you feel like bypassing the rules. The FAA strictly defines exactly 9 acceptable purposes for this certificate. It must be for things like research and development, showing compliance through flight tests, or crew training. It also covers exhibitions at air shows, air racing, market surveys, amateur and kit-built aircraft, and specific light sport operations.
And let me tell you, the FAA does not just hand these experimental certificates out on a whim. Under sections 21.193 and 195, you have to submit a massive amount of data. You need a clear statement of purpose, the estimated number of flights, and the specific areas you'll fly over just to safeguard the public. You even have to hand over detailed 3-view drawings. And if you want to use that experimental aircraft for market surveys or sales demos, no way are you doing that without establishing a strict inspection program and proving the aircraft has already been safely flown for at least 50 hours. Or 5 hours if it's a modified type certificated aircraft.
Section 5, Special Flight Permit Rules. We've officially reached the tip of our funnel, the core focus for today's explainer.
So I want you to imagine this real-world scenario. A severe storm rolls through and damages your plane's cosmetic fairings. Or maybe your annual inspection expires while the plane is parked at some remote dirt strip. Structurally and mechanically, the aircraft is perfectly safe to fly over to your mechanic a few towns away. But legally, its standard certificate is technically invalidated because it no longer meets all the requirements. So how do you legally and safely move it?
The crucial point of this entire regulation hinges on this exact phrase from Section 21.197. The FAA recognized this total logistical nightmare and created the special flight permit. But notice the absolute vital caveat here. The aircraft must be capable of safe flight. Let's be clear, this is not a loophole for flying dangerous, broken airplanes. It is a highly controlled, temporary transit tag for a specific, necessary mission.
And much like those experimental certificates, you can't use a special flight permit just to go sightseeing with your friends on the weekend. Section 21.197 limits this strictly to 5 pragmatic scenarios. You can use it for flying to a base for repairs or storage, delivering or exporting the aircraft to a buyer, production flight testing, evacuating from impending danger like a hurricane, or conducting customer demo flights in new production aircraft that have already passed their initial flight tests. That is it.
Furthermore, this permit is actually brilliant at accommodating extreme logistics. Let's say you need to ferry a small aircraft across the ocean. Section 21.197 allows a special flight permit to authorize an aircraft to safely take off over its maximum certificated takeoff weight. Now, this is strictly limited to the extra fuel and navigation equipment needed to cross terrain where no landing facilities exist, but it's a game changer. Additionally, for major commercial operators under Part 119 or fractional ownerships under Part 91K, the FAA can issue a continuing authorization. That allows them to conduct routine maintenance ferry flights without having to apply from scratch every single time. It really streamlines safety for large fleets.
Section 6, Applying for Special Permits. So, say you find yourself in one of these unique situations. Let's walk through the exact procedure to get this permit in your hands. Section 21-199 is your roadmap here, and it demands total, absolute transparency. To get this permit, you have to explicitly tell the FAA the exact purpose of the flight and your proposed itinerary. You have to list the required crew, pilot, co-pilot, whoever. And crucially, in Step 3, you must admit exactly how the aircraft currently fails to comply with standard airworthiness requirements. Put it all on the table. Then, you propose the self-imposed restrictions you're going to use to guarantee safety. Finally, the FAA might require you to perform appropriate inspections or tests before they sign off. They have to know exactly what the risk is and exactly how you are mitigating it. By understanding this entire regulatory life cycle, from the rigorous testing of a standard, factory berth, to the tight constraints of experimental categories, all the way to the strict transparency required for a temporary special flight permit, we can really see how the FAA leaves absolutely no regulatory blind spots. Every single flight has a purpose, and every purpose has a safety standard. So I leave you with this thought to chew on. Next time you hear an engine and look up at the sky, which highly specific, carefully regulated category of certificate do you think is flying over you right now? Keep learning, keep flying safe, and I will see you in the next explainer.